Well, okay, so we are in our third week of our book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and this is also something that we're doing in small groups. And what I'm going to share with you today, just know that there's a lot of words from his book. I want to be able to share as much as I can. Before I go on, I want to say a huge thank you to Kathy Walters, who is sitting right here, because she spent hours and hours and hours last week doing everything she could to get this so that it wasn't blinking off and on for us. So thank you, Kathy. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you while I could. Okay, so week one, we talked about noticing the inner roommate, or what some may call the maniac in our heads. And throughout the last couple weeks, I've had some of my friends say I've got dormitories full of these voices in my head. And, really the idea here is just to recognize that we do have that voice and that it is narrating the world for us. And it is really, if we're not conscious, if we've not been awake enough to start changing that voice, then it's a voice that is from our past, from the beliefs that we've taken on to be true. And in that, it's not necessarily going to be a voice that's going to support really our best expression of life. It's a voice that sometimes is going to hold us back. So that week was just about noticing. How many of you noticed you have a voice or 10 going on all the time? Yeah. Normal. Okay. Last week, we talked about freeing the energy of our heart. And we, recognize that we are energetic beings and that when something happens in our life, and, it all comes down to fear. We're afraid of losing control, or we're afraid of not being good enough. There's all kinds of fears that are deep down in there. But that most of the time, instead of just allowing these situations to kind of pass, we protect ourselves. And so in that, we create these emotional blockages. And I look at the perfect example of the young man that I spoke of at the beginning of the service, and how instead of, a blockage there in his heart now, he's found a way to, as Michael Singer says, just to let it go, and so that won't be pinged later on in life. So today we're looking at how being open to change allows us to stay in the flow of life rather than creating blockages that stifle us. And the intention is to know that change is inevitable, so why not embrace it, right? Why not embrace the change? The principle that we're looking at today is the fifth principle, I act. It is not enough for us to know the truth. We must live the truth that we know. We must recognize what we are rooted in. And we must know that we are co-creators of this beautiful life, with divine intelligence. Our power that we're focused on is the power of strength. And strength is the stillness and the ability to know that the Christ within is our true strength. It is our ability to stand firm in the face of changes and to know the truth. In our women's group on Friday night, we did a really neat process where we had an image of a tree, and then we had some roots, and then we had a main root, and it was called the tap root. And we ultimately named what this tap root was for each of us. So it was love and wholeness and, things like that. And the idea is that we could feel and see that tap root really going down into not just Mother Earth, but into the greater truth of all that is, into what we call in unity the Christ of our being. So that when things do come up, that we're going back there, that we're rooted firmly in the knowing of truth, again, with a capital T. And sometimes we're going to remember to go there, and sometimes we're not, right? Right. And as we go on with life, we get better about it. And even in those times when we forget to go there, we come back a lot faster, don't we? And that's the great. And the main thing is, and I always say this, when you don't beat yourself up. Be gentle with yourself. And know that you're doing it mostly good. You're doing it mostly good. And that's fantastic. Okay, so Michael Singer tells us that if we are resistant to change, and this was so interesting to me, that we will try to create a world that is predictable, controllable, and definable. And we will try to create a world that doesn't stimulate our fears. As long as life is showing up the way that we want it to, then we're okay. Yes? Yeah. Absolutely. How's that working for you? And I got it that that's what he meant in the beginning when he said, we don't control our life. We don't control every event that occurs, just like what happened in Vegas. We didn't control that. We weren't in control of that. But I love how this young man took control of what his attitude and where his beingness was going to be with it. But life happens. So he says, when we have fear, insecurity, and weakness inside of us, and we attempt to keep it from being stimulated, there are going to be events and changes in life that are going to be great opportunity for growth. Isn't that wonderful? He reminds us that we have all kinds of people and situations, and they're there for us. They really are there for us. And they're there, again, for, something that's coming up to be healed. So I love that he used an analogy of a thorn, and this is how we try to protect ourselves. So he said, imagine that you have a thorn in your arm, and that this thorn is going right into a nerve. And every time you touch it, the incredible pain that comes from just touching that. And because it hurts so much, this thorn is a serious, serious problem because, you try to get to sleep and you roll over on it and it hurts, or you try to get close to people and you can't because they touch it, or you go out for a walk in the woods and something might touch it, the branches or something. It's a constant source of disturbance to you. So you have two choices. One choice is to leave the thorn in and to do everything that you can to try to protect that thorn from ever being touched. The other choice is to take the thorn out and to release it. The thing is that without even recognizing it, we do choice number one over and over and over again because we've not been taught to do it differently. We didn't know to do it differently. And so what we've done is we've started taking these thorns or these things that have happened to us, and again, they're based in fear. And so we're trying to create this protective something so that it doesn't get pinged. And so he goes on to say that maybe we want to go for a walk in the woods and we have this big thorn, but now we kind of need to go out there and to, chop down some of the branches so it doesn't get hurt. Or we're gonna, if we have to, if we have to go to sleep at night, since we have to go to sleep at night, we're gonna maybe create some apparatus around us so that we're not pinging that thorn, and but then to be able to go out and be with people, we might have to create more of an apparatus, because what if somebody out there touches it, and so pretty soon we've got an apparatus that's mechanical and it has wheels on it, and we feel very proud because we figured out the way to protect ourselves. But are we free? We're anything but free when it comes to that. And I love that analogy because I could really relate to that analogy in my own life. And I love this stuff because when it just helps us to become clearer on what's happening inside of us. We look at life and we look at things that are happening, and it's so doggone easy to say it's that person out there, it's that situation, it's that event. These are the reasons that I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I'm fearful and I'm worried, or whatever it is. And I'm going to tell you guys, it comes back here. It comes back here. We are the reasons why we are experiencing those things. And I know that sounds so impossible sometimes, but I'm going to tell you it's not impossible, but it takes a lot of work. And it takes a real commitment to being aware of this on a daily basis, and not just daily basis, but an hour by hour basis, because things are going to come up and they are going to ping you. Let's see. He says, okay, so say that, we have this something around us, and we go, out into life, and let's say you say something to me, and I get mad and I yell at you, and then I start to tell you that you're wrong, and I do everything I can so that you will never, ever say that thing to me again. If you cause any disturbance in me, I'm going to make sure that you don't cause that disturbance in me again. I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And again, this is because we're not aware, but I love what he says about this. He says, when we do this, and this is so important for us, we environmentally pollute the people around us. Because all of a sudden now we're taking what's like hurting and fearful in us, and we're saying, it's you. It's about you. And we're not taking any responsibility for it. And if maybe you've been the one that screamed and yelled, but have you ever been in a situation where somebody's screaming and yelling? And it does pollute the environment, doesn't it? You know, it's just like, whoa, we don't like to be in that environment. Here's the thing, you know, whatever you give to somebody else, that's going to be their thing then, you know. But the point is, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to pollute the environment with this stuff. And even sometimes if it doesn't come out verbally, it's going to come out energetically, isn't it? And so this is why we want to clean this up. We want to start to really, really, really become aware, because keeping our stuff keeps us absolutely trapped. So I love books, and I love, you know, Amazon has this daily Kindle deal thing, and I try not to get on it every day because I love to get these. I always go to the spiritual books, and I came across this one last week, and it's by Kyle Gray, and it's called Raise Your Vibration, 111 Practices to Increase Your Spiritual Connection. And Kyle is kind of a psychic. He's an intuitive. And so he tells this story of a woman, her name is Marion, who came to one of his conferences. And she asked him if her karma was that she was never going to have a loving relationship in her life. And he said immediately he intuited into her, and he could feel such incredible love in her. And he said that he knew immediately what was going on for her, that she had just been let down regularly in her life and in her relationships. And as he tuned into her vibration, he realized there was an unconscious story running in her mind and in her life. Does that sound familiar? This is what we want to start waking up to and become aware of. He says, Marion had been divorced after a long struggle in her marriage. Her husband spent more time at the office than he spent at home with her and with the kids, and they just wanted his presence and his love. And so the rejection had begun to affect Marion on an emotional level. And even though on the outside she was confident and she was a rock to her family, on the inside she felt worthless and alone. And he said that I tapped into her energy. When I tapped into her energy, I could feel that she was telling herself a story that was much darker than the truth. She was saying she wasn't a good woman, and she must have done something wrong. Anybody relate to that? I'm not good enough. I didn't do it good enough. I'm not enough. At the same time, she was feeling victimized by this. So she was also saying, why did this happen to me? You know, what did I do to possibly deserve this? And so ultimately, he said to her, Marion, you have become so used to being rejected and hurt in your marriage that now you expect it from all relationships. And that's why you aren't manifesting a relationship in your life, because you're expecting to be hurt, and you know for certain that you don't want to be hurt again. And then he goes on to say, this is placing huge walls around your heart, and they are blocking you off from the love you deserve. I mean, this is like so what we're talking about right now. And this is the kind of stuff, you guys, that we want to get a hold of. You know, when Paul and I first got together, and most of you know that my husband Sean passed away unexpectedly. And so when Paul and I first got together, and it was so unconscious until it finally became conscious. And I remember talking to him about it when I started to become conscious of it, that even though I was all in on the relationship, and I knew that I loved him, I knew that this was it, there was a part of me that was protecting myself because I never wanted to feel that depth of pain again. But I didn't recognize it for a while. And then when I finally started recognizing it and talking to him about it, then whoosh, I was able to let it go. But that's the kind of stuff that we want to become aware of, that when we're protecting ourselves, but we're not. We're not protecting ourselves. We're keeping ourselves from such grandness in our lives, from such amazing experiences in our life, rather than protecting ourselves. He ended this by saying to her, you see, my friend, you deserve to love and to be loved. You don't have to do anything in order for it to occur, and you don't have to work hard to get it. Experiencing love is your divine right. And that's so true. And that's where we go back to being rooted in the Christedness of our being rooted in truth, remembering that we are the Christ, that I'm not all that God is, but all that I am is God. Therefore, I deserve everything good, because all that I am is God, is all of the qualities, all of the goodness, all of the abundance, all of the love. It's all mine already. But if I get too far out here in the world, I'm no longer going to believe that. And that's why we have to come back to center. We've probably all heard the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." And I love that quote, and I love it's a very positive quote. It's talking about the universe. And then but I read this differently, that what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny compared to what lies, those blockages, the pain, the fear, the not enough-ness, like all the stuff that's happened, all the stuff that we're worried about, that's nothing. Because when we get this part figured out, when we go back to what this actually means, that what lies within us is the whole universe, is everything that we need, then all of this stuff takes care of itself. And we understand that, right? Yeah, it all takes care of itself. Michael Singer said that the spiritual journey is one of constant transformation. In order to grow, we must give up the struggle to remain the same and learn to embrace change at all times. Real transformation begins when we embrace our problems as agents for growth. Jesus tells a parable in Matthew 13:24-30. It's the parable of the wheat and the tares. And the parable is that the kingdom of heaven is like a man who planted all these good things in his field, and they started to grow. And his servants went out to check it, and they came back and they said, there's tares, or there's weeds out there with the wheat. And he said, well, enemies must have come in the night and planted that. These thoughts. And they said, well, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to pull up the tares? And he said, no, because if you pull up the tares, you're going to pull up the wheat as well. What I want you to do is let it grow. When it has grown and we're going to harvest it, we're going to separate the wheat and the tares, and we're going to use the tares or the weeds for fuel. And we're going to put the wheat in the barn. And so the idea is that we're going to use these experiences that we have in life to fuel us on to something greater instead of keeping us small. And that's where we tend to get, is to that keeping ourselves small. I look at our country today, and I look at our world today, and I think if we don't start doing this work, I'm not going to say it that way. We need to start doing this work. This is vital that we start doing this work, because there's not a chance, you guys, that we can be with other people who are different from us. If we haven't cleaned our own stuff up, we cannot be with them and really listen. And the word listen means a willingness to be changed by what I hear. A willingness to be changed instead of all of a sudden our defenses coming up. And it's vitally important in this time that we can start having conversations, that we can start understanding each other, that we can really start moving into dialogue in which our defenses aren't coming up. But our defenses are going to come up if we don't work with this. The beautiful thing is, Jesus said, you can say to this mountain, be thou removed and cast into the sea. And if you believe it in your heart, it will be done. And so when these things come up in us, that's our opportunity to take a deep breath, step back and go, whoa, what is this about? How do you know it's coming up? Because you're feeling it, you're anxious, you're afraid, your chest is tight, your vocal cords are tight, the blood is rushing to your head. And you stop and you say, okay, what is this? What is this about? And then you tell it, be cast into the sea, because you have no power over me. This is not valid. This is not real. This is not truth, because I'm rooted in that greater knowing of what truth is. I'm rooted in God. I'm rooted in the Christedness of I'm rooted in love. I'm rooted in openness. I'm rooted in connection. I'm rooted in compassion and in kindness. I'm rooted in that greater truth with a capital T. That's what I'm rooted in, and that is what is going to come forth from me. That is what I'm calling forth to come forth from me. And it's vital that we start to do that on a much more regular basis than we have been doing, because if not us, then who? Because we can't look to other people to do it. We've got to be the ones. Karen Drucker has a song that says we are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones who will make a difference. But we've got to clean our stuff up, and we've got to be willing to clean our stuff up. John 14:27 says, and we did some great quotes last week, some scriptures about the heart that were so powerful. And in this, Jesus says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. My peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Wow. Do not let your hearts be troubled and don't be afraid. Because my peace is what is your reality. And when you're grounded, when you've got that taproot going down and you come back to that center over and over again, then you're going to come back, and what's going to well up within you is that peace that passes all understanding. It's not the peace of the world. It's the peace of the Christ. It's the peace that helps you to let go of those blockages and to stay present. And to stay present with an open and a loving heart. Do you know how different our world would be if we can do that? If we can do that on a regular basis? Stay present with each other with an open and loving heart no matter who's standing in front of us? Wow. Here's the thing, we can get there. We absolutely can get there. And there's no doubt in my mind. And I sincerely believe that you and I wouldn't be here if we didn't have that deep commitment in our soul, that yearning, that something that is saying there's something more. And I am so ready. And we're constantly being pinged today, aren't we? With everything that we see on the news. It's constantly coming at us. And even if you don't watch the news, you're hearing it because people are talking about it. And it's pinging that stuff that's saying, this is crazy, I'm afraid, I'm mad, I'm sad. And what we want to do is we want to get back to, wait a second. I know my source. I know my source. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be worried because God is my source. Peace is my source. And I'm going to continue to be that. And I love it. I'm going to use Charles Fillmore's thing where he talks about love. But I'm going to say, we become that peace. Until peace is what expresses uppermost in itself and in all others. We become that peace until it expresses uppermost in all others. So your homework for this week, if you choose to do it. Again, it's always about waking up and becoming aware. Wake up, O sleeper, and rise. Wake up and with the desire to catch yourself when you're getting pinged. How many of us believe we'll get pinged today? Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, okay. We're getting pinged all the time. The beautiful thing is, and here's the beautiful thing that he says too, is that, all of this is coming up because you are ready. You're ready. You're ready to be healed. And if you have a lot of irritation and annoyance around you, you're really ready. Because all of that is coming up because you are ready to have a different experience. You are ready to let go. You are ready to be the peace that you desire to see and to experience in the world. And so for this week, that's your homework. If you would like to do that, I encourage you to do it. It's life-changing. This information in this book is life-changing. And I know that, we may look like a small group, you guys, but we are a mighty group. And we are here to do a mighty work in this church and in this community and in the world. And what each and every one of us comes forth and brings forth makes a difference. You matter that much. And I say, namaste. Namaste.